Hello again folks, it's David here with part 2 of the Skull Cave build. In part 1 I used resin to cast this, which is going to be the focal point of the piece of terrain. There's a link just up here for that video if you haven't already seen it, and there's another one down in the description of this video below, and I would strongly recommend that you check that out before you continue watching this one. And just while you're scrolling down, if you want to hit the like and subscribe and get notifications, that would be absolutely brilliant. But that's enough waffling for me. We should really get on with the build. Yes, we should.
Get on with it.
Time to draw a bit of a plan. Obviously, we want a baseboard, and because I want the cave sort of in the middle, and it's got to be going into something, I am going to do a backboard for it, like that. And there'll be a sort of cave entrance going back. Skull will sit sort of on top, like so. Now, because I sort of want it looming over, I do know for a fact that I'm going to have to sort of put a wedge or something like that just to kind of prop it up. So that's going to be construction, but that'll be hidden. This part I want sort of more rocky, so we'll have ledges and things like that, and the cave will sort of all meld into it. Don't know what kind of outcrops or anything like that I want as of yet, but you get the sort of general idea. I'm going to want a pathway up into it, and I probably want some kind of cobbles or something like that. I'm not going to make it just a sort of dirt path. I do want paving stones after a fashion, like that. The paving stones will probably go into the cave, and then obviously it's going to be sort of, you know, a few odd rocks here and there. Actually, maybe sort of like a rock with another skull on it, so that maybe in game terms I've sort of like got to ask a question or something like that before they can get entry. And there'll be, you know, foliage and grasses and tussocks and all that kind of thing around. And because it's sort of wilderness, I may even have some trees around, possibly even up in the cliff as well. All right, so that's kind of what I've got in mind. Let's put it into action.
You get in? Got it. Good.
So with this being the plan, obviously the main centerpiece is that skull and cave. We've got the skull, and this is going to be the cave. Yeah, okay, it's cheating. I could have scratch built the whole lot, but this was like $2 or something like that on Temu, and I thought, oh, one of those will come in handy. I was seriously considering, you know, cutting this down the middle and using one half for this project and one half getting saved for another one. But I think, just with the sheer size of this sitting on top, and the fact that that is a good rigid plastic, then realistically I should probably keep it in one piece and use it in the whole model. I can always get another one. But I do need to make that wedge in there just to get that skull sort of more up and prominent. So now that I know that I'm going to be using this essentially for this section, I need to sort out a baseboard that's, you know, going to accommodate all the rest of the stuff. MDF baseboard sorted. I'm using MDF because basically I want to keep the warping to a sort of minimum if I can possibly get away with that. I have left a nice straight manufactured edge on the back because I want to butt that up against the backboard and have a good join there. You can't see it because it's off camera because it's quite a large baseboard, but the rest of the edges have been shaped. You'll see that later on. I have the tunnel in place, and I'm just marking around the silhouette like this because I want to know where it is going to sit on the board, because before the end of tonight I want to have the paving done, because that is going to be done using textured paint, and I want to give it a good dry overnight and carry on with this tomorrow. And to make up the textured paint we have two ingredients. This is just normal sort of household paint. It's a test pot, and I am going to use a reasonable amount, and that is the sort of liquid binding agent for it, for want of a better word. And this is baking powder. So this is going to be the aggregate for it. Yeah. And I'm just going to get a couple of scoops in there and mix it up. I'm just going to add the water a little bit at a time because I don't want to thin it down too much. Yeah, that's the kind of almost polyfiller paste consistency that I was after. Just make sure it's mixed through thoroughly. All right, yeah, I'm happy with that. Then using a nice big brush, just get that on liberally. And yes, I am going over the sides because I want to make sure that I've got it all the way to the edges and it's a good thick coat that I'm putting on here. And then I'm just going to use the straight edge of this spatula just to kind of try and even it up. And I'm hoping this next bit's going to work. This is a polymer clay cutter and it's in a hexagonal shape, and I'm just going to give it a wee spritz with some cleaning fluid, and hopefully that will leave an imprint. Alright, that's enough markings for some nice hexagonal cobblestones. I'm going to leave that to dry overnight, and then that is going to get sanded down so it's a wee bit more flat in the morning, but it still should have some texture where, you know, there's bits like that where it's very low and the high bits. It's had a good chance to dry overnight. While it was busy sort of curing and solidifying, I did go over and redefine a couple of the lines there just with a toothpick. But now we want to sand it flat back so that it's nice sort of level flagstones, and I'm just using a sanding block just to even it out like that. And that's after about 10 minutes of sanding. Do take a little bit of care. I did have a couple of them lift like that, but when it's ancient ruins you're going to get missing and lifted flagstones in any case, so I'll just use different ground cover there and it'll, you know, add a wee bit more interest to the piece. I'm okay with that. So that's the backboard attached. Mainly used super glue and baking powder to get a good strong joint. I've also used a couple of tacks at the back, just going straight into the bottom of that baseboard. And yeah, you can see I missed the mark on one of them, but hey, the rest of it is nice and secure. I also put the plastic tunnel piece on there just so that that back end could give, you know, like an upright support for that backboard and keep it in place. And it's tacked all the way around with super glue and baking soda. It's now time to get the back cliff built up, and I've got these offcuts of foam. I know this kind of foam can take a spray paint nicely. You saw us do that on the Dragon's Lair project. In fact, these are where those offcuts are from. So I will cut these into interesting shapes and get that cliff built up. I'm not going to video cutting out foam and sticking it to a wall because that's just going to be boring. But alternatively, here is a montage of pictures taken while work was in progress. Then we've got a really watered down mix of PVA and soapy water. We're going to spread that over the rock and cover it with toilet paper. Back to the montage. And then of course we need some rock and sand for ground cover. Let that dry overnight and it's off for an undercoat. Now that silliness is over, there's just a couple of areas where the spray paint didn't quite catch it, so I'm just going to do a bit of a touch up. Fair enough, the colour's not quite the same, but it's all grey, so it should be fine. Slight change of plan. The grey I used for the touch-up was just a little bit on the too light side, so I've ended up just stippling it on some of those sort of like raised areas, and it looks a lot more natural than the sort of odd splotch that I had. But now it is time for a dry brush with a nice light grey. And then finally we need to get some grass on there and let it dry overnight. I get to play with a new toy, and it's one of these. It's a static grass applicator. Now I have already loaded it with a mix of the darker green stuff that came with this kit. It's only a cheap one from Temu, and some Army Painter lighter green, because I always use sort of like a mix of greens and do all my ground cover in one go. Now, as I say, this is the first time I've used this, so rather than go straight onto the model and make a mistake, I am going to do an experiment and make some tussocks, because I said I wanted some tussocks. Now, Now, I'll just get something to stop that paper from flying all over the place. This is just baking paper, and I've seen somebody else do this. I'm going to give it a shot. This is essentially making sort of like the pre-bought grass clumps that you can get from sort of like the war games manufacturers and things like that. And this is just PVA glue, and I'm just going to do some dobs of it, various sizes. I'll do some in a bit bigger shape so we get a variety, get a few really small ones, and then it should simply be a case of turning the applicator on and shaking it, and I've done an absolutely rubbish job on that. It is definitely starting to come together, and it's got to be said, it's probably at the stage where we could actually play on it, but I want to do a little bit more prettying up. These are trees. Now, I got these from a local game store, Iron Horse Hobbies. They do Warhammer and model railways and things like that. It's certainly one of the biggest suppliers around where I live, and this is yarrow. Now, it's a natural thing. They grow natively around these parts, and as you can see, it's just been dried out and had a little bit of cover added to it. So for trees, it is absolutely brilliant, and I'm going to be adding some of these to the model. And in order to do that, I am going to make a little bit of a hole just to burst through the tissue paper and glue and assorted stuff. Give it a neat coat of PVA around the area, add a wee bit more just on the bottom there, and then see if we can find the hole again. That feels like it there. Get that nicely rooted down, and then this, you've seen me use before, is flocking, but it's mulch coloured, and I'm just going to sprinkle some of that in around the base, just like that. I'll get on with adding the other trees. It may only be 5 trees, but you get the impression that, yeah, there's wood there. Minimal, it's in the name of the channel, and it's already transformed the model, and it's adding an awful lot to it. What I am not going to be so minimal about is this. It is lichen, and we need some bushes. There are certainly gaps in the rock that need to be covered up, and that's what I'm going to be using it for, and I am not going to be using it sparingly. But rather than this gorgeous bright new stuff, even terrain builders have their pile of shame. And this, I am estimating, is around 30 years old. It is well faded. It is certainly well suited to a rocky terrain because there's not that much nourishment for the plants, and that is going to be getting added in very large clumps, sorting out all the gaps, giving a little bit of fringe to the skull. I'll show you what it looks like after. I didn't make quite as much of a hash of these tussocks as I thought I had. It does take a little bit of getting used to the static applicator, and one of the things that I've seen that I was doing wrong was kind of holding it like that. Realistically, you've got to have the sort of mesh surface nice and close and nice and flat. That's the trick to it. I've had a bit of practice since then, but these are perfectly fine, and you know, even though they're not as sticky up as they could be, they will certainly break up that flat grass ground cover. And the good thing about baking paper is, and I'll show you one just here, that they do just peel off. A wee bit of PVA on the back of that, pop it in place, I'll get them done. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I made a couple of little sort of really narrow line bits of grass because I just wanted to break up a little bit between some of those flagstones. It's almost done, and yeah, I'm perfectly happy with the way the tussocks have sort of broken up that ground. It's looking far better. Yeah, okay, it could have been more sticky uppy, but having it more flat like that is going to impede less on movement, so 8 swings and roundabouts. And the very last thing to be added to the model is going to be these mini skulls, which I did say that I was going to do. I think what I will probably do is pop a wee bit of darker paint on sort of like the nostrils and the eye sockets. I'll maybe give it a light grey, just a wee bit of a dry brush just to help with the highlights on those. I'll leave the bulk of the skull the same colour, and then I'll get them dotted around in place, and then it's probably going to be time for some glamour shots. And you know what? That wraps it up quite nicely for this video. Achievement obtained. I'm now a proper wargame terrain creator because I've done a skull cave. Although it's got to be said, it is an awful lot of faff just to create a display stand for a resin skull that I've made. But you know what my favourite part of this build has been? It's actually been just those little bits of grass between the flagstones. It just breaks up what was a big sort of flat grey area and adds a little bit of character to it. Anyway, if you like what you've seen, please do that social media stuff. Hit the like, hit subscribe, leave a comment down below. Is there anything about this build that you have found useful or you've enjoyed, or, you know, is it absolutely rubbish? I don't mind. Any engagement is good engagement, so please pop a comment down below and stick around because there is a load more videos coming up in the coming month or so. But until then, it's a good night from me and it's a good night from him. Ta-ra now.